we go, ladies and gentlemen. I am ready to talk some Speeding Bullets tonight. That is right. Speeding Bullets, the Elseworld story that dropped in 1993. Looks like Mike's Amazing World of Comics has it listed as on sale September 14th, 1993. It's the Unspoken Issues podcast. We're talking 90s comics. And with me, as always, Dean Compton of the Unspoken Decade and Darry Waite. You guys ready? Dean, we'll start with you. This was your idea, correct? You were like, Speeding Bullets, we got to talk about it. Was there any specific reason why?
Well, I like it. I think that's the big reason why.
That's a good pick. That's a good
I read it as a kid. It's a very good story. I thought y'all would get a kick out of it. I don't know that we haven't hit a lot of the Elseworld stuff. I know we did like the Super Samurai 7.
Super 7. Yeah. You got it. You're right.
And otherwise, I can't recall off the top of my head. We've done a couple what ifs here and there. But this is a really good one. It's a turning point in time because in theory, it's like the first non-Batman Elseworlds, although it's very, very Batman, but it's not technically a Batman book. It is Superman Speeding Bullets. And so that's a turning point in the Elseworlds saga. It's an interesting way to flip all of these things on their head while everything winds up about the same. Incredible art, very atmospheric, very moody. And I just thought that you two would get a kick out of it. Also, let's be clear, great friend of the show, Matthew Price, Speeding Bullet Comics.
That's right.
Down in Norman, Oklahoma, sbcomics.com. So you always want to throw a little something for the buddies. So it ties in with his store too. He's always very gracious with his time. So hey, let's throw all this together. So yeah, and they ship. So if you're interested in anything, sbcomics.com. Bringing it all back home. You also get JMD Matisse solving the world with hugs.
Ah, yes.
Solving
this was
the problems of the world with hugs. I say that more pejoratively because I'm actually a big fan of him and his writing, but he does like it when things get solved with hugs.
Listen, if that was the way things could get solved in this world, no matter what, my goodness, it does go a long way.
To be fair, more things get solved with hugs than slugfest. And superhero comics are peculiar in that somehow you have to have every conflict or almost every conflict be violent and somehow something worthwhile come out of it and somehow a conflict to be resolved. And in the real world, violence sometimes necessary for either for survival, for freedom, what have you. But usually in our interpersonal lives, not incredibly useful. And in fact, deleterious. So he's probably right. Hugs are probably better than laser ray zaps. But I'm on superhero comics. I'm also sort of here for the laser ray zaps.
That's right.
But I do say that, and it sounds more pejorative than I mean it, because he's a brilliant writer who's done a lot of brilliant things.
Darry, this is on the shelves in September of 93. Were you an Elseworlds fan? Were you picking any of this up?
Yeah, I love Elseworlds. I would say most of my favorite DC comics, especially from the time the Elseworlds brands, most famously Kingdom Come. But I had never read this. I knew of it. I knew of the cover, and there's a kind of related issue where it has Superman in a similar pose, but he's dressed as Green Lantern. So it was always on my radar, but typical Dean fashion, it was like, oh man, you've always meant to read it. It is time. We're all going to sit down and do this. And I echo everything Dean said. I really enjoyed this for a 48-page book. It's packed, gets you in, it sets up everything. It twists what you're used to and what's most interesting. It gives a great conflict that I wasn't expecting, and it wraps it up real nice. Before we were recording in our little chat, I was talking about how I can't believe there weren't follow-ups to this, because it just seems like, well, it's the early 90s and we don't really know what to do with Superman. Well, we turned him into Batman. We should probably do more with that concept. I feel like if this book came out today, there would be an ongoing book where just Superman dressed up as Batman and being a little bit more violent than he's used to would be something DC pushed very heavily. I also love GM. I've always pronounced it DeMatteis, but I've never met the man, so I don't know.
I have no idea. So it may be DeMatteis, maybe DeMatteis. I don't know.
DeMatteis. I don't know. So,
Jesse,
sir, if you're listening,
Deciding
this is how
vote.
he has to pronounce his name from now on, by the way, too. Like, we're making this official.
Listen, I've told you guys about the pronunciation bridge. I'm certain I have, where everybody gets to hold hands on the pronunciation bridge. We all cross it together, and it doesn't matter. You can pronounce anything however you want. But yeah, when it comes to names, sometimes people get a little upset. So I have no idea, and I don't want to offend the man, but I've always went with Mateus. But
all right, I'll try and do J.M. de Mateus the rest of the way.
You don't have to do that. We get
no, it's okay. Let's try and keep it consistent. Let's try and keep it.
I think you need to email the man and tell him that that's how he needs to pronounce. Like you said.
Well, what I'll do is I'll go to an autograph session and he'll sign it. I'll be like, no, sign it, J.M.D. Matisse. That's.
Oh man!
But yeah, he's always a writer that if I see his name, especially from this period of time, I tend to pick up the book. Dean's right. A lot of his stories, they hit the same beats, but they're not bad beats. You know?
No. That's why I said I say that and people are like, oh, so you hate the guy. I'm like, not really. For me, it's like Johnny Cash, okay? Johnny Cash has two songs, the fast one and the slow one. I love them both. And I've listened to a million Johnny Cash albums, and I'll listen to a million more. But if you think there's a third Johnny Cash song, I don't know, buddy. He didn't do much else.
No, that's a really good way of putting it. He's a certain style of music, and you got to be in the mood for it, because if a really good song comes on, you're just not feeling it, you're not going to want to listen to it. It doesn't matter. I think it's the same thing here. If this catches you in the right mood and it's something you already know you're going to like, you're going to enjoy it because he does his job very well. But yeah, it's a different flavor, and it's certainly a different flavor of other superhero comics, because the violence is never presented in a good light. And in all of his stories, it usually ends with solving the internal conflict with as little violence as possible. And the older I get, the more I do appreciate that. But this was great. This really was. These Elseworld stories, man, they get you in, they give you a good story, and they get you out, and that's it. That's the end of the relationship, and I love it. I didn't have to get the next one. Even if I wanted a next one, I didn't have to get it. And this was great. I actually read it twice just because I really enjoyed the design work. It's very much of its era in the designs of all the characters, but the Batman costume that he has is great. And
released a figure of it. McFarlane put out the Speeding Bullets figure, which I've been meaning to get, but I don't like their molds for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I liked the Mattel stuff better. Yeah,
I think the McFarlane line for the DC stuff, I wouldn't say it's been hit or miss, but there haven't been too many where I gotta get that. I gotta have that on my desk. This one though, if I see this in the wild, this one's getting bought. I can tell you that.
What about you, Jesse? Did you pick this up off the shelf? I bought this. Man. I bought it off the shelf.
Whoa.
Okay. Bruce Wayne's not going to come kill me. I'm good. I bought this one. And I bought it. I'd heard that it was going to come out, and I bought it and did like Hero Illustrated, like the same month, reviewed it. And they were like, it's great. And I was like, that's right, it is. Yeah. I have great taste, Hero Illustrated. You're right, it's great. I said it was great. But Jesse, did you buy this one? Or?
No, I was looking just to see when was 93 the year that they did all of the Elseworlds for annuals that
No,
year?
I think 93 is Bloodlines.
Okay. All right.
And 94 is the Elseworlds.
Okay.
95 is like Year One, and 96 Legends of the Dead Earth. Something like that.
I'm taking a look here just to see, but I can tell you that I did not.
I don't want someone to come hang me because they got the. Actually,
well,
sir.
There's a ton of Elseworlds out there, and they span a lot of the years, so it's not. Right, I just remember
they chunked them out for a long time. It was kind of a guaranteed sale for them. What if Batman was a pirate or an octopus or a stapler?
Right. But no, I did not get this off the shelf. I assume that I was picking up the ones during the annuals, whatever year the annuals were, but I missed this one, and this is the first time I ever had the chance to sit down and read it. Again, it was a situation where I knew the comic existed. I'm a big fan of What Ifs, and I'm a big fan of Elseworlds. Some of my favorite types.
94 is the year of the
annuals.
Elseworlds.
Okay. All right. So I'm drawn to these types of tales. I can remember I just reading my first Elseworlds. I can't remember what the specific one was, but I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, hey, this is like What If. I've had plenty of What If issues. I did not realize DC did something like this. And Yeah, some of them are great, like this one, which I think is really good. So
it's a masterpiece on every level.
When you look and dig into this thing, it's simple concept, but it's executed just wonderfully. The resume of J.M. Batiste. I'll say it 5 different ways. J.M. He has got a.
You're just gonna start calling him Jimmy.
Jimmy
Jimmy D. What's going on?
Oh man, when you talk about a writer that has a prolific amount of work in both the big two, he's got a lot of DC under his belt. Started out with, I'm looking at 1978. This is Mike's Amazing World of Comics again. Weird War Tales.
Yeah.
Number 70 from 78. He's in DC for quite a while. Gets his first Marvel work with.
He does some great work with the Creature Commandos in that tale. It's funny because the Creature Commandos are all like, it's horrible. The guy's a vampire, a werewolf, this lady's Medusa. And he does a good job of exploring the pathos of that. Then Robert Kanigher comes back on, right? Who's just like straightforward Sergeant Rock Rider for the whole time. So now all of a sudden they're just like, their sergeant's like, shut the fuck up, vampire fangs, or what the fuck. Everybody's mean and like terrible, and there's no introspection. I love Weird War Tales, though. Everyone who's into comic books should read it start to finish. It is a wild ride.
Yeah, his first Marvel work, it looks like, was Marvel Super Special number 17, which the book was Xanadu. I assume this is based off of the movie.
Yeah.
Is Xanadu?
Marvel Super Special was full of licensed shit. There was Beatles stories, Kiss, the infamous Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that didn't get released in America was going to be one of those. So it was like it was a dollar book that was aimed at an older audience. And so that would make sense. A lot of licensed stuff.
Conan, Captain America, Defenders.
Yeah, new Defenders.
We're getting in. That's in the mid 80s. We've got back to DC. He's doing JLI in 88.
Yeah, he's part of the Bwahaha, the Just JLI. But I think when you're talking about this guy, the conversation starts and ends with Moonshadow, right? That's his.
Tell me about this, because I saw it on here. I have no idea.
What's a Moonshadow?
Yeah, tell me.
I have not read it, to be honest, but he does it in the 80s with Marvel. It comes back with Vertigo in the 90s, and people have talked greatly about it. It's something that's on my list I've meant to read for some time, so I don't want to misrepresent it, but apparently this is the gentleman's best work.
Wow. Okay.
It's a creator-owned title. It has a lot to do with working out, I think, issues with a kid and his dad. Again, don't quote me too far on that, but I think there's a lot of that goes into it. I don't think it's superhero stuff at all. And he's in charge of his own line now, right?
Where? At DC?
No, he just publishes his own comics, I wanted to say.
Oh, that would be great. That'd be awesome, actually.
Let me look, because I'm just spouting shit. Just saying things about Moonshadow Hawk. I know who that is.
Did he write the Hal Jordan Spectre book?
I believe so.
I have every issue of that series. I love that series. I really did. That was another one of his where it's just every month the Spectre deals with something instead of a horrible, violent crime. He figures out a way to get them out of their nonsense. I like that book.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
That in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Got some X Factor issues under his belt. He's on Amazing at some point.
He's still doing Spider-Man. I think they just announced the new book from him that I had added to my pull list. So yeah, he's still he's
doing a thing called the Demultiverse. It was announced in October 2022 through a Kickstarter, but I think you can look into that, the Demultiverse. So yeah, he's doing some. It's his own line.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that is great. We should just call him JM Demultiverse for the rest of
JM Demultiverse. Jimmy D. I'm calling him Jimmy D.
Jimmy D's perfect, man.
Jimmy D.
Let's talk about our artist here, and this Eduardo Barreto. And I can say that I did not recognize the name. However, I do recognize some titles that this man has done, such as Atari Force. He was involved in some issues there. New Teen Titans in the late 80s, from 87, it looks like. Going into the 90s, there is a book from DC called Shadow Strikes.
The Shadow Strikes. It's about the Shadow.
Is it seriously? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, the Shadow, Lamont Cranston, Twin 45s.
Got it. Doing some alien...
He does great work there, too, by the way. I love that Shadow.
Okay. Aliens Predator, the deadliest of the species from Dark Horse there in the early 90s. So he's doing the art on that.
Yeah.
And
which one is the deadliest of the species?
Ooh, that's a good question.
The answer is man.
Yeah, the answer is man. Yeah,
the
that's
answer
what I would
is
say. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you boys are ready, I'm going to go ahead and hit us with the synopsis here, and then we'll talk about the book itself.
We might.
Okay, here we go. In an alternate reality, Martha and Thomas Wayne's lives took a drastically different turn the day they discovered a rocket ship with a young boy inside. Renaming him Bruce, they raised him as their own, sheltered from the world's gaze, his only companion being the loyal Alfred. Growing up, Bruce displayed extraordinary powers, gifts bestowed by Earth's yellow sun, akin to Superman's. Yeah, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Thomas instilled in him a philosophy of intellect over brawn, teaching him to outsmart adversaries rather than rely solely on his abilities. Tragedy struck one fateful night as the Waynes left the theater, echoing the familiar scene of their demise at the hands of a mugger. When the gunman turned his weapon on Bruce, the bullets proved futile against his invulnerable skin. Consumed by uncontrollable rage, Bruce unleashed a ferocious assault, using his heat vision to eventually kill Joe Chill.
When you say it out loud, it's really funny that Joe Chill got killed by heat vision. Go on.
Yes.
I know that's gruesome on some level, but I really hadn't thought about it when you're just reading. You say it out loud, you're like, Chill got heated up, motherfucker.
He did. He got his face melted off.
Well, he tried to shoot a kid.
Right. He's
much more evil in this world than he is in the regular DC universe. God. He's like, I can't shoot a kid. Here he's like, I guess you got to shoot a kid?
Yeah, I hate it when kids cry. I hate it. And then pulls the trigger to kill the kid. As years passed, Bruce grappled with guilt and shame, withdrawing from society and harboring a deep-seated hatred for the world that had taken his parents. Haunted by his powers and the violence they wrought, Bruce's solitude was shattered when thieves invaded Wayne Manor, only to be met with his wrath and impenetrable defense. Seeking answers, Bruce turned to Alfred, who revealed the truth hidden beneath the manor, the rocket ship, and Thomas's journals chronicling Bruce's extraordinary journey. Guided by the symbol of bats soaring above, Bruce embraced his destiny. Clad in a bat-like costume, he emerged onto the streets of Gotham, confronting crime as the Batman. His actions caught the attention of reporter Lois Lane, whom Batman saved from some gang members, yet she was abhorred by the caped vigilante's brutal dispense of justice. Meanwhile, the nefarious Lex Luthor schemed to seize control of Wayne Enterprises, only to be thwarted by Bruce's timely intervention. Yet Luthor's machinations were far from over as he transformed into the maniacal, not mechanical, which I almost said, maniacal Joker, intent on spreading chaos across Gotham.
A mechanical Joker would be terrifying as well, to be perfectly fair. I would not be very, and we've seen some mechanical Jokers, and at no point is nobody's been like, hey, more of that, please.
Yeah, no kidding. In a tense showdown, Batman confronted the Joker, teetering on the edge of darkness until Lois's impassioned plea reminded him of his true purpose, to inspire hope, not fear. Moved by Lois's unwavering belief in him, Batman spared Joker's life and saved Gotham from Luthor's mercenaries. Recognizing the potential for redemption within him, Lois unmasked Batman, revealing Bruce Wayne beneath. She knew that already. Embracing his new role, Bruce adopted a new persona.
What kind of reporter is she if she ain't figured this out yet? What the fuck?
Bruce adopted a new persona, Superman, a symbol of strength, compassion, and unwavering justice. There you go. That.
And he's got that face thing that people had in the 90s.
The face thing. What are you talking about?
Gambit,
the mask?
That head sock.
Oh, the head sock.
That goes halfway up, frames his face. The thing the forever people wear.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and start here. This was a great way to spin the origin and combine the two heroes that we know, Batman and Superman, by placing young Kal-El in the path of the Waynes. By combining these two, we also get the combination of the Joker and Lex Luthor, which is great as well. Tell me.
The Penguin.
And the Penguin. So, okay.
Because look, he has a bow tie on, and he uses an umbrella, and this Lex Luthor Joker is a bit portlier than either the Joker Lex Luthor that we're used to. So I maintain, and maybe
Jimmy D.
Maybe Jimmy D, whose name is John Mark. It's from JMD. That's where we're getting this, right? Maybe that's what he meant. I would argue if that's not what he meant, then I don't get it, because that guy is at least 20% penguin.
I remember seeing the umbrella, and I saw you guys had a little bit of chatter going on before I had read the book, and somebody, I think Dean, you'd mentioned, hey, the penguin, the nod to the penguin, and I'm like, I'm keeping my eye open for that. So yeah, the umbrella definitely is reminiscent of the penguin for sure. And yeah, Lex Luthor is definitely looking like he's enjoyed too many holidays.
Well, he does say at one point he was just eating and watching Wheel of Fortune. So
that's true.
That's part of it. We got a little fat, but no, he also has that bow tie, which neither of those guys wear a bow tie as a general rule. And I think that's another part of it. And I'll be fair, the Penguin is my favorite DC villain, so I'm probably looking out for things like that. I love the Penguin.
Nice.
Do you really?
I love the Penguin. The Penguin is fantastic.
Oh,
he's hilarious. He does cool shit. He looks dumb. I love that nowadays he runs the Iceberg Lounge and Batman's all like, well, I could bust you. And Penguin's like, well, it'll take you a while. I've dressed this one up nice. He's like, well, I'll let you be if you give me a little info. He's like, sure. But don't come around here next Thursday, Batman. You won't like it. I think it's just very interesting that this is a guy who, think about this book too. A lot of this book is Thomas Wayne being like, fisticuffs, not for a refined gentleman. Why don't you use your brains, young Sir Bruce, right? So I love the Penguin because that's how he fights Batman. He's never going to fucking slap the Kata Hajime on Batman and choke him out. He has to outsmart him in different ways, and he has to use contraptions and neat little things. And a lot of times Batman could get the better of him, but it would be a Pyrrhic victory for Batman. There's Jokers over here just fucking dumping nuclear waste like school kids' mouths or something.
Right.
It's like, fine, if the Penguin's gonna scam rich widows, I guess that's what he's going to do. I've got to deal with this. The KG Beast is gonna kill Ronald Reagan. I don't have time for this guy who just robbed the zoo. Okay, he's got the birds.
Yeah.
I'd rather he saved the birds, to be quite honest with you.
Well, yeah, me too, but I get where they were coming from.
So as far as this tale goes, there's a lot to be said about nature versus nurture here, or a combination of the two. This is a Kal-El. This is a baby from Krypton that gets rescued by clearly a different family and endures tragedy rather early in his life that shapes him quite differently than Clark Kent. We watch Bruce grow up and he's sheltered. He doesn't want to go outside. As a matter of fact, after his parents get killed in front of his eyes, it's a situation where he's just like, I don't want anything to do with the world. And there's a lot to be said there. I think that's pretty identifiable for a lot of people to see that somebody who suffers a tragedy, they just withdraw into themselves and do not want to associate themselves with anybody else. They don't want to socialize or any of that. So you watch him become this, I wouldn't say a violent guy, but he has a really hard time controlling his rage, especially when somebody breaks into the house. Did you guys get the impression?
He's got that room full of goddamn violent crime clippings, and he's in there like.
True. He goes in there, and
on the one hand, he's claiming that I'm going to stay here so nothing can hurt me. On the other hand, this room proves he's not doing anything but sitting there and hurting.
True.
I really like that room though, because it was so messed up. And he says, the reason I have this is because I know of all the pain and suffering, not only in Gotham, but in places far, far away. And it's so messed up because he doesn't know he has super hearing. It's like he was so sheltered that he knows he's hearing these things. And for whatever reason, maybe it's his own grief, it's his own internal punishment, he's focusing on the awful things that are going on in the most awful city. And I just thought, what a messed up way to externalize that conflict of cutting out every awful thing and pasting it up on the wall and saying, like, what is the world trying to tell me? Why can I hear all of this stuff? Why can I know all of this stuff? And then finally, when he has his moment of catharsis, it's like he just decides to be this violent revenge-filled, crazy person. And it's the first time he's really given any agency in his life. And I just thought it was an incredible way to combine those two stories. It wasn't at all what I was expecting.
One of the weird things, too, is for trauma victims, it's obviously most trauma victims, as far as I know, don't have super hearing. I can't verify this 100%, but for the purposes of this conversation, let's assume none of them have super hearing. It's not uncommon for them to fixate on other people who suffer the same thing. This newspaper clipping thing, maybe to this degree, is a bit out there, but they're trauma victims, rape victims, or violent mugging victims, and they'll find they have a scrapbook full of this shit happening to other people. And you're like, this isn't helpful, obviously, in a lot of ways, but they're externalizing this. This is how they're going through the process, and he's doing the same thing, except like you said, he also has super hearing, so it's kind of different. But
I had no idea about that. That's really interesting. Wow. All right. Let's
Well, I mean, it tracks. There's a lot of people who are trauma victims who then commit trauma themselves. People who are raised with child abuse, but tend to become abusers and stuff like that. So it's a weird fascination with something that you might know is bad, but you can't turn your head away from it either. I'm not a psychiatrist or a therapist, licensed social worker, so I don't want to go in too long about it because I don't want to steer somebody the wrong way. But the way trauma victims can respond can vary incredibly, and this is not a super uncommon one.
To piggyback off what you were saying about trauma, the title of the book is kind of messed up too, because it's a combination of Superman's very heroic theme song of Faster Than a Speeding Bullet, except in this case, it's the literal speeding bullets that ruined Batman's life.
Right.
And once I got through this, I was like, that's dark. Again, this is a much darker story than I was expecting, because Superman is so full of hope and so full of, I have to figure out the best way to help as many people as I can. And Bruce is like, well, it was this or kill myself. And then when you push the two together, you get something really unlike either one that came before. So I really enjoyed this.
Well, that's one of the things about it. This has Superman on the title, and it is officially a Superman story, but there's one page of Superman in this. Everything else is Batman, except for arguably the part when he goes and punches the tanks in Gotham, when he takes Oswald Cobble Luthor to jail, and he's like, I'm going to go save my city. Other than that, though, it's Batman. This Batman happens to have all the powers of Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask, do you guys think that he used his powers at all between when he let loose on Joe Chill and then up until, because we kind of fast forward to him at, I think he's 21 when all the rest of this stuff starts to happen. Or do you think he used it in increments, and then finally when this one big event happens, he lets loose, throwing these guys out the window of Wayne Manor, and he's like, what am I? I just got this sense there was this long gap of, just like you were saying, Darry, he didn't know what was going on with himself. He had no idea, and he never explored that part of himself because he was afraid, number one, of what he was. And number two, it was a way of also affirming something horrible that happened that night. And the word, or the phrase, I should say, the phrase survivor's guilt. My goodness, it wrecked this guy. It wrecked him.
How terrified must he have been to have this awful thing happen and then fire shoots out of his eyes? It makes him link the two events in his mind, right? We would call them powers, we would call them a benefit and everything else. To him, it's probably like, no, all I know is I had the worst night in my life and I lit a guy on fire.
Right.
Like, he doesn't maybe necessarily feel bad about that in retrospect, considering what the guy did to him, but still, it's not two things you necessarily want to connect in a positive way. So
he's also very young. So when young people think, he's 10, 8?
Yeah.
Like when you do things when you're that age and then something bad happens, you think somehow you caused it. So if he ever shoots fire again, people will die again. Right. Whether he kills them or it's his parents, Alfred will die. You'll think crazy things like that. I'm sorry, go on, Darry.
No, that's an excellent observation. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, there has to be a connection between that stuff happening at the exact same time that would make him not want to have anything to do with that until he absolutely has to when the guys break into his house. But that's a really good way of putting it. It's like someone might die. The one person I have left who I do care for might die if I do this. So yeah, that's an even better way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Kids do that all the time. Kids are like, oh, well, I was bad, and that's why my parents are getting a divorce. And then if that's not dealt with, kids will feel, obviously they won't be, well, when they're 23, well, I was bad, so my parents got divorced. They will intellectually understand that's not what happened, but that trauma and that feeling will cause them to make decisions based on they might not even know they're doing, as I know because I caused my parents divorce. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't cause my parents divorce, but no, my parents didn't get divorced. But I do carry a lot of trauma because of my bad childhood and everything. So I do understand. You're like, I must have caused this, and if you don't deal with it, you carry it. And so for me, that's what I was seeing here. I have a big question though, and I don't think he used his powers on purpose ever until that time. I think he may have been like, oh man, I dropped a fucking baseball or whatever and lifted a desk he shouldn't have lifted, but he shouldn't think about it. I want to know though, when did he pick up the pipe? Right? No. There's no one there to teach him how to smoke. He's just like, oh, I guess I'll just start smoking. I guess I'm an adult now. It's what you do, right? It was just so funny that he just sits there in the chair, which is a great panel, by the way, where he sits against over. The last one, he's got this pipe. And I'm like, why would you have done that, dude? There's no way Alfred got you tobacco. How did you get this tobacco, sir? No,
that is absolutely him honoring in some way his dad. I would assume. His dad
did have a pipe. It's true.
His dad did have a pipe, and I think that's...
You think his dad was smoking that Chiba, though, and not tobacco?
Listen, Bruce... Let me tell you something.
Alfred's like, listen, your dad wasn't as good as you thought. He was on that 420 train, okay?
Me and your mom must retire to the smoking room.
Your dad was the first physician in Gotham City to advocate for medical marijuana.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
This whole scene in the study is great, though, because it really is just it's like a little boy pretending to be his dad, right?
Right.
The pipe, the jacket, the chair, the whole thing. I read something online once that said something, a butler only calls a child master, so Master Wayne or something. That was only something you would say to a child. To an adult, you would say Mister. And the post was, well, I bet Alfred did that once to an adult Bruce. And then Bruce remembered that that's how he would say it to his own father, cried a lot, and Alfred never did it again. And that's all I could think of here is Bruce Clark, whatever you want to call this character, went through unimaginable trauma, but it always ends the same way. I have this idealized version of my father in my head for the time that I did have him. I'm gonna try to be like him. And I think to Dean's point, going so far as like, well, maybe I should smoke this pipe. Let me see what happens. I would actually like the idea that there isn't any tobacco in there, and he just keeps lighting tiny little bits of it on fire so it makes smoke. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oh man,
he's like, oh, I miss my dad, and Alfred's like, what do you miss? It's like, oh, he used to make me do a bunch of math. Because that's what you see in here. Like his dad taught him the classics, the logic,
right?
Yeah.
I never get from Batman.
That time when Dad was mad at you because you didn't understand quadrilaterals. That was pretty cool. No, it actually does really, really well done. The scenes where they separate the parenting styles of Thomas and Martha are actually very well done, and they both seem to love and care for the boy in their own way. Jury's out on Alfred, though. He's in it for himself, right?
I always like the portrayal of the Waynes, too, because they always seem very focused in their kid's life. It's not as if Bruce had, in any version of the story, it's not as if he was raised by nannies and everything else. Thomas Wayne is old money, right? He never has to work a day in his life, but he decided he wanted to become a physician. And most stories that play up that angle are always like, no, he works at like Gotham General. He works at a trauma patient comes through the door. He's going to make sure that he's right there. And the same thing with Martha. She runs every foundation in the city and she's always doing stuff, but they're always there for their kid, which I always thought was great because Bruce didn't lose two parents or whatever in his life. They lost two people who were completely dedicated to their onlys. And I think that the writer does a very good job of showing that here. You can see what Batman Superman learns from each one of his parents. And again, I just thought it was really well done because they don't just show up to get shot. You see what he loses, and he really presents that.
He also presents, I like the last panel too, where he's like, they loved him too. He was great to them. Because there's something innate about Superman, provided that he lands in the right spot. You're trying to teach him to be a human, and he winds up being a better human than we are just because he doesn't have the limitations we do. He's just like, well, this is how to be good, so I guess I'll be good. So even in this situation, he's still just like, everybody's just better off because I'm here.
Yeah, it's just being around him makes you a better person.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that we were talking about the emotional journey that Bruce is going on here. There's I think of a mention by Lois Lane of how he seems to be a bit kind of immature. I guess we could kind of chalk that up to the fact of the sheltered lifestyle that he lived.
I talked to one person for like 16 years. So,
right.
You know.
Right.
And the next guy he talked to was the guy taking the guy he had talked to hostage. So, yeah, he probably isn't very good at talking to people.
Right. But yeah, we're talking about the Kents actually raising Kal-El versus the Waynes. When you compare the two, it's an interesting dynamic. You've got a farm couple, hard work. You've got a lot of great values there that are instilled. And the Waynes got their own values themselves, but there's a lot of privilege that's involved. There's a lot of sheltering. They have the money to keep Superboy a secret. They have the money to kind of stash this kid away, get his own personal education. And it's interesting. It's a great way of kind of showing that dynamic. But a lot of that's really not the focus of the story. As far as the upbringing goes, it's more, okay, how does this kid adjust? How does this person become a superhero? Right. And it's obvious that he's brutal. He's upset. He's vengeful. And he takes that out. And he definitely, I thought those guys that invaded the mansion were dead. I was like, these guys are dead. There's no way they're leaving here. But Superman ends up, or I should say, Bruce ends up throwing them through the window, and they are still alive afterwards.
For a little bit.
Yeah, until the purple gloves and close around their throats. I do like how Bruce immediately jumps into accepting who he is as soon as he learns his origin, where Alfred shows him the rocket ship, and immediately he flies up into the air after talking for a few. This is coming from this state of confusion, and finally Alfred's like, look, here's the journals, here's the rocket ship, and he flies up into the air and he's with the bats. He's like, okay, I feel like I am who I'm supposed to be now. And there's a lot of confidence that comes about that. He shows up at the board meeting. He's like, well, we've never seen you before. He's like, well, you're going to start seeing me now because I'm feeling good. I'm feeling myself.
Think about Alfred here. So for years, he's with this kid, right? And he loves the kid, and the kid loves him, but that kid's a goddamn time bomb. Oh, he knows what this kid is, but the kid doesn't, and he knows that the kid probably fried Joe Chill's face, but he has to keep this cool, calm demeanor all the time. And again, at some point, this kid was going to be 14 years old. And y'all were young men once who were 14. I was 14. What a terrible, terrible age. What a terrible person I was when I was 14. Other than buying these comic books, right? Am I right? You know what I'm saying? But I did some other nice things too. But it's a confusing age where you're willing to lash out a lot more than you should, particularly in the society that we live in, which is a very weird, masculine-focused society in a lot of ways, or historically has been. So Alfred's got to sit here with this 14-year-old who any moment could be, but I wanted fucking tenders, and just fucking fry his head. Just like smash it, just grab him by his tie and just helicopter him around, throw him out the window. Like, he doesn't know if that'll happen or not. It's funny, I'm making light of it here, but can you imagine the mental toughness that it would take to deal with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Kal-El's not like that, though.
No, he's not, but there's no way he could know that on the front end. No matter how good or bad he was, 14-year-old boys are good at 14-year-old boy, which it means at one point they're going to do something super stupid, just wildly stupid. Why'd you go down and throw rocks through every fucking window in Old Man Huntington's chicken house? I don't know. Why you don't know why the fuck you did it. You don't know. You got that evil in you. You're 14. So I'm just saying Alfred had to deal with that, and this could happen any day. Regardless of how good or bad this kid was, the possibility existed.
My last note here, and I'll turn it over to you, Darry. You mentioned the costume already, but I've got to definitely talk about how cool of a 90s kind of upgrade it is with Batman. I should say with Bruce Wayne Batman, which I guess that's this one. This alternate reality stuff gets me confused. With our regular continuity Batman is nice enough to let you see that he is a human, that he has a face. The mask doesn't cover every bit of his face. This one does, and I think it looks badass. It's just a hood with eye slots, and you see somebody like that fly up to confront you on a rooftop, you're going to probably shit your pants because it's that scary. But yeah, I dig this design of the costume as well. So, Darry, what's your thoughts on the book, man?
Yeah, if you had asked, to Dean's point, 14-year-old me to design the Batman costume he'd want to see, it would be this. Full face mask.
Mine would look more like Azrael Bats. I'm like, on him. Big old missiles. Sorry, go on.
But yeah, I actually thought that was a really interesting change because historically he tells people he dresses like a bat to scare them, right? So that they're not going to fight back. They think he's a vampire. They think he's a demon. They think he's supernatural. He's going to drain their blood. The costume is to do half the work for them. Superman doesn't have that problem. Superman, as far as he knows, invulnerable to all harm. He's just doing this to further mess with them, right? He doesn't show up and give them an ultimatum. He doesn't drop them off buildings. He's like, I'm going to push my index finger into your brain because I don't like you and I don't care. It's so messed up. It's so dark. It's like Bruce doesn't choose to dress like a bat for a particular purpose. He dresses like a bat because this is the only way he could see going out of the house and actually doing this. This is how he has felt for 10 years. Out there, just externalized. Just this is that room of weird. This is the Batman costume. My favorite panel in the entire book, and it's used, I think, on the back cover as well, is when he realizes that he can fly, and it's in what we would call the Bat Cave after Alfred has shown him the Kryptonian rocket ship, and he flies amidst the bats, and they just show this great scene of we see him upside down. And it's a great amalgamation of the two ideas of Superman flying through the sky effortlessly, but usually with the sun behind him. And here, blackness. The bats are all over him. The only light, as it were, is the red of his eyes. It's a very Batman thing, but it's actually terrifying because it's all of Superman's unlimited power. And I thought that set the stage so well because, again, it's not what you were expecting from a Superman story to see such an angry young man, someone so filled with rage. And it wasn't what you were expecting to see from a Batman story because this kid did not spend his trust fund going around the world and learning from the best masters. This kid didn't sit at Sherlock Holmes or James Bond or the Crimson Avenger's knee and listen about great crime fighting techniques. This guy just sat at home and listened to the world getting worse and one day was like, well, I tried, but you almost killed my stepdad. Now it's time to go fix things forcibly. So I thought that was great. I thought this panel was amazing. I know we've already mentioned the artist, but this art could have come out today. This stuff is beautiful. This guy, he doesn't waste a panel. He doesn't waste a page. The pacing is amazing. It's also very, very easy to read. Again, the second time I read it, I didn't even focus too much on the dialogue. He tells you an amazing story. I know he's from Uruguay, and he may have done some comics down there, but I definitely made a note, hunt down what else is out there, because I just fell in love with the art here. The other thing that I really, really focused on, and Dean kind of touched on this, I did not get the Penguin vibe from our Lex Luthor at all, but I loved watching Lex as the Joker, because I thought that it's the same inversion. Right. So we're going to turn the heroes on their head, but it's the same thing here. What does Lex normally represent? Control. He wants to be the guy who's in charge. He wants to be all this other stuff. Well, here, the same accident that ruined the Joker is going to ruin him. Well, when he has the one bad day and has this meltdown, what does he do? Well, he doesn't just, to use Dean's example, pour toxic waste in the mouths of children, which, again, is definitely a Joker plot I could see coming out today. He decides he's going to burn this entire city down. He liquidates all of his assets. He hires mercenaries. He decks them out in red and green armor. He gets tanks and drugs, and he floods the city. And it's just like, this city, Gotham, has decided it's not going to bend over to me the way Metropolis did. I'm taking it with me. And I just thought that was amazing. I thought that was great motivation, and I would have loved to have seen more from this character.
Those mercenaries, right? They looked like shock troops. So could Cyberforce have been part of it?
Oh!
SHOCC.
Shock troops. Possibility.
Possibility.
It's a possibility.
Which Cyberforce member did you want to see most in this comic book, Jesse?
Oh, Ripclaw needed to make an appearance.
Yeah, I agree.
Ripclaw's just hanging out there on top of a building. He's just going, yeah.
Look, Ripclaw's only ever doing three things: hanging out on top of a building, jumping off a building, or
coming
snarling
right at you.
about not getting to be on top of it, jumping off a building. That's it.
That's all he does. Darry, you had mentioned, I think, in the chat about how the end of this was dense. And as I read it, I was like, yeah, we definitely needed 12 more pages. We needed some more time to spend with the Joker. Because I feel like the end of this, I know we had a page count. There was so much that was shoved into these pages that, oh my goodness, I would have loved to have had a second issue of this or something. But yeah, we get to the Joker. Lex is just like, I'm going straight to the Gotham Gazette, and I am going to find this here Bruce Wayne, and I'm going to give him a piece of my mind as the Joker now, finally. And he just storms right up in there and does it. And I was just waiting. We needed more. I felt like we needed more, but what was that? What a classic way of escaping through a broken window with the old backpack helicopter. And he's like, oh, it's good stuff. Grabs Lois Lane and then uses the helicopter to get away. But
yeah, it was good. It was a nice setup. It was a very quick way of making sure that Superman had someone to punch. That the Super Batman had someone to punch at the end of the book. It obeys all the rules of the story. It does it really well. But yeah, Act 3 is nonstop, and not only in the action beats, but there's this really dense emotional arc, and it happens in the last 3 pages. And the very last page is a full page splash of him in the Superman costume. And I had to read that a couple of times because it's he's going full speed ahead, and then suddenly it's over, and he's having this relationship with Lois, and in the span of only 2 pages, she knows who he is, she unmasks him, and somehow, in between the panels, she convinces him, you don't need to be like this, I don't think this is why you're here, and then he comes back as Superman. It was like, oh, that's all really good, I really like that happened, that it was Lois. That needed at least 1 more page, and again, I'm happy it's there. I'd rather have to read it more than once than not have it. But it was just like, oh, wow. I feel like he got to the end and it was like, oh, I'm at 48. Okay, time to cut out a page or 2. But yeah, good stuff. Again, I'd rather want more than have more and be disappointed, right? It's very possible he could have done a 2-issue story and then not had enough to fill it up. But this is a packed 48 pages. And those beats at the end, they come out of nowhere, but they hit like a jackhammer. The idea that Lois finds him in any life is got this kind of beautiful symmetry to it, right? He doesn't fall for Vicky Vale. Selena doesn't get repurposed. Lois Lane is driven to Gotham. She finds her man. To your point earlier, he's still awkward around her. He still immediately falls in love with her. And I thought there was something great to that, because one of the defining characteristics of Superman is that Lois has got to be there. And for him to finally emerge as Superman in this Elseworld, I thought it was fitting that she was the one who did it for him.
Yeah, I don't think there was going to be a lot needed to convince him to go the good route, I guess you'd say, or to not be as brutal, to represent peace, justice, and whatever. But he definitely needed that push, because the way he was taking care of things was quite violently. But that, again, it's Kal-El. It's the man that is inhabiting the costume, and he's always good. That's just who he is. Dean Compton, what's your thoughts on the book, man?
Well, I think that Lois Lane gets treated incredibly well. They use her as kind of that narrative focus where she's telling the story, talking about different things that could have happened and how they grow to fall in love, and how she convinces him to take a brighter path. So I do think that she's done super, super well. I love how they make her there's this tendency sometimes to make Lois seem more helpless than she should be, but she's a really tough reporter, and was before she ever met Superman, or in this case, Bruce Wayne, and would definitely had her own ideas about things. Although, let's be honest, they start hooking up, right? But he's the publisher and she's the journalist and he's the owner. That's a conflict of interest. We got to talk about ethics in journalism here, right? They should not be doing that. And for someone who purports to be so into law and justice, that seems very, very circumspect. And I want to chastise them. It's fine. In all honesty, worse things have happened in the history of journalism and broadcasting. The book just drives itself very well forward. It never really seems to lag. There's always something fun as it goes, as it keeps going. It does a good job of having you imagine a greater world out there. What other villains or what else could be combined?
This is like a weird amalgam.
Like Cat Banshee, like Catwoman and the Silver Banshee, going to get all matched up here? Yeah, is this guy going to meet the new gods? How is this Superman going to react to the fourth world?
Oh, one of you guys said that. I think it was Darry or this hasn't been revisited, right? There hasn't been much any of this afterwards.
Not of which I'm aware. But.
Man, there needs to be more of it. There really does. I feel like we're missing out on something here when you have this. There's so much that could be talked about with this character and how they were brought up and the dark side of Superman's past, this tragedy that shapes him. But yeah, you're right, man. What I would love to see some extra stuff happening here, some more amalgamations of some of these characters and how this how Batman, how Bruce would actually fare in outside of Gotham. He's in Gotham this whole time. Let's see him go do something else.
Yeah, I think that part of it is just I can't remember when. It's in the early 2000s. They decided to kind of really tamper down Elseworlds. They felt like there had been too much of it, that it had put out too much material. And some of it is just weird. What if Batman had two boats so it gets out there? What if Batman was in My Little Pony? Jesse's ready for that.
That would be great. That's like when the Punisher met Archie. I want that. I absolutely want to see what happens when Batman has to go up against a pony-based foe and he realizes at the climax of the story, oh my goodness, my normal tactics won't work. I have to defeat him using the power of friendship. That takes Batman out of his comfort zone, places him in a foreign area and says, all right, you got your prep time. How are you going to defeat the... I actually don't know who the My Little Ponies fight, but whoever they have to fight. So
I don't remember either, but I do think that Batman, they just really overdid the whole putting somebody in a different thing. Later on, there's like, what if Superman was Frankenstein's monster? There becomes all this kind of thing, and it's not necessarily that any of it was bad per se, but it just became kind of a knee-jerk reaction, which probably kept them at the time from going back to this well as often as they probably should have. Now there wouldn't seem to be a problem with it because it seems like every offshoot, alternate,
right, dude,
double alternate, underground, world of tomorrow, wrapped in yesterday gets their own book or arc. So it seems this guy could just show up and pal around with the one of the super kids, right?
Injustice is out there. You've got all sorts of great alternate reality stories that are, one of you guys mentioned Deceased. That's a whole other one that's out there too. It's widely accepted and nowadays to actually enjoy a story like that because there's new avenues and new ways you can go about it.
Right.
So,
there's also, if you look over on the Marvel side where they're doing Black Armor with Daredevil like we've talked about, and they did, was it Warlock Rebirth with the old school creative teams? And I think there was a Silver Surfer recently that was the same. There's definitely a market for this if you want to do, I don't know, powerful locomotives or whatever the fuck you're going to call it. Tall buildings, right?
Tall buildings.
Birds, planes.
Perfect.
There's certainly a market for more from this world. That's all y'all did. The fight scenes were really good, very violent. The only thing that really bugs me more is, like y'all said, other than it being rushed to the end, is like, what was Luthor going to get by killing Bruce Wayne? I guess it just cemented the whole thing.
But that's the thing. He didn't want anything, right? Because he'd become...
Right. This just seems to, why was he doing this if he was just going to destroy the whole thing? But people don't always make rational decisions. Like the guy from the Carnage concert, man, with the knife. You don't need a knife at this concert. There's nothing going on here. You should really just have left that knife at home and just been here to enjoy the music.
Let me tell you where.
Sometimes people don't always think rationally and make the right choice. And I feel like Lex Joker made the wrong choice here. This wouldn't have added to your plan one way or another. It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark shit, right? Like, it would have ended the exact fucking same, whether Indiana Jones did anything or not.
I think that when Lex has a bad day and when he gets turned into the Joker, this is the type of thing that he just wants to tear down. I imagine that if his plan had gone through to get Wayne Enterprises, he would have done the same thing. He's like, okay, we now only sell black tar heroin to children. That's it. That's our entire businesses.
All those orphanages we've been propping up, dump the toxic waste in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to get the kids out? No, why would we get the kids out?
Yeah.
Maybe someone will get superpowers, will turn them into mercs.
Yeah, exactly. It would have just been this personal thing of Lois doesn't love me because she outed me as a person who murdered their parents. I don't know why he wasn't in jail for that. But what did Bruce Wayne turn around and do? He hires Lois. He hires Perry. He hires all these people that Lex got rid of, and he brings them over to his city, this city that Lex just can't get his hands around. I also like to imagine that the accident that scarred him happened here. He went to Gotham and he was like, I'm going to buy one of these half-closed refineries just so I can have a base of operations. And someone was like, no.
We're out of acid. Oh, no.
Or someone was like, we're blowing it up for the insurance money. I don't know why you decided to tour on this day. It's like the whole point. I think Dean, you said this a couple episodes ago. It's like you can dump as much money into Gotham as you want. You're not going to fix anything. That's the nature of the beast. That is its fundamental nature. So I feel like Lex going here, it's like, of course you were going to get turned into the Joker. It's like you have nothing in Metropolis. There's no alien demigod walking around for you to be like, oh, I'm going to kill him. I'm definitely going to kill him. It's like,
right.
bored. And the one person who beats you is living over here. So you're going to come over and see what you can mess up. So yeah, I imagine if it had gone through, he would have been like, oh, cool. I own Wayne Enterprises. Light all the buildings on fire. Just everyone, you're not getting raises. You're getting the opposite of raises. In fact, I'm just going to start taking money away from you. And it would have been like, how many automatic weapons can we buy and leave it in schoolyards? That's kind of his thing at that point. So
I want to see what Metropolis is like in this world. I want to see what Bibbo's doing. I want to see what Jimmy Olsen's doing. Was Jimmy Olsen in this? Did he show up at all?
No, he wasn't mentioned. I thought it was funny. They only mentioned a few Superman characters, but almost no Batman supporting characters. Like no mention of Jim Gordon or anyone in the GCPD. There wasn't. I hate to say it,
that's where this book could have used 12 more pages.
Yeah.
Flesh it out.
This world a little bit more and see what these get. I know that Matthew Price of Speedy Bullet Comics is waiting with bated breath to find out what Agent Liberty was doing in this world. He is the biggest Agent Liberty fan you can imagine. If you ever meet him or talk to him, make sure you mention Agent Liberty. Loves to talk about Agent Liberty. It's fucking wild. Yeah, is Gangbuster holding it down? Is Black Lightning running Suicide Slum? What is going on
Guardian?
in Metropolis? What happened to Matrix? What happened to the Matrix Supergirl?
Right.
Do you know what's so funny? I had someone just the other day ask me if I liked
Agent Liberty?
They asked me if I liked Agent Liberty, and I was like, my friend also likes Agent Liberty a lot. I have no idea.
Agent Liberty?
I'm just the messenger. I was like,
messenger of what? Agent Liberty? Did Agent Liberty hire you to be his PR guy? No, apparently he was on an episode of Supergirl, so... He
had a whole arc on Supergirl. And he was played by a guy who used to be on Smallville, so maybe that was the resurgence. I think he was a villain there, so I don't know.
Well, he's sort of villainous. He's sort of kind of
weird. Yeah, I know.
Part of the right-wing militia, it would seem, and as a jetpack, you shouldn't give those people jetpacks.
My response to my friend was Agent Liberty, I guess is fine, but I always preferred Commander Steel, the Jerry Conway character.
Right.
I think originally the name was just Steel, but I was always like
indestructible man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you need an off-brand Captain America for a bunch of DC stores, you can't go wrong with him. There was one active in the Golden Age, there was one active in Vietnam, and there's one in whatever you want to call the modern era. So I always go back to him for whatever reason.
So
I want to get a shirt now that says you don't give those people jetpacks, because a truer statement I have never heard about anything in my life.
What the fuck are you doing?
You don't give those people jetpacks.
I can strongly remember buying this book and just, I don't know, it felt like just an otherworldly experience. I hadn't had a lot of Elseworld stuff yet. The annuals aren't coming yet. I might have read The Golden Age by now, or The Golden Age might be coming out at the same time. I can't remember. Those are some of my first big things, but I can remember wholeheartedly getting this comic home and being like, I'll be real careful and I'll eat some cereal while I read this. And I was careful enough. I didn't ruin it or anything.
Oh, man. Had to be worried there for a second.
You took the risk sometimes.
Don't do that.
You took the risk sometimes.
I did not eat cereal around my damn comics.
You never ate cereal and read a comic book?
No, well, okay, look.
Right, you were buying all those image books that were going to be worth $1 trillion.
We're in a fucking fucking polybagged, buddy.
Right.
I'm not taking the chance.
On it, you're like, oh, this is Brigade, the Captain Crunch variant. There's this like cake with a piece of Captain Crunch attached. In fact, Rob Liefeld's Extreme Captain Crunch is coming out soon.
Oh my goodness! Could you imagine?
Reading that a fucking heartbeat, to be honest.
Fucking Captain Crunch, an extreme
I would buy
superhero.
every variant cover. I would get on his whatnot and buy it. but no, this is just a real masterpiece of a book, and it shows the Elseworld stuff got a little saturated at different points, but this is the epitome of what that format and genre can be if it's done right. And in a way, I think this is, you wouldn't think about this, but it's a tribute to the old Silver Age Superman. Because Mort Weisinger used to do all those imaginary stories. What if Superman was married, or he had gotten killed, or this or that? And this is kind of, again, I'm always a big fan of people, of works of art that are like, hey, we're doing this our own way, but you can see those neat tangential connections to older stuff. So I really think that this is a really good example of that. If you're a Superman fan or a Batman fan, I think it's an absolute must read. I think if you're a 90s fan, it's a must read. Elseworlds fan, must read. DC fan, must read. And I think really, if you just love comic books, it's a must read. You're really talking about something I'd probably give a 97. All in all, you can't do much better for an afternoon than a bowl of cereal and speeding. No, be careful with that.
Please
did you ever eat anything and read a comic book, like a sandwich or anything?
I'm sure I did. I did.
You did, Jesse. Don't act holier than that.
If it was greasy, nope.
Right. Cyberforce. I'm not talking about Cyberforce, but maybe Vanguard. Maybe some lesser image book that you didn't hold in such high regard.
Goodness gracious!
Yeah,
that just makes my stomach turn.
It's Fleeting Image. It's a parody anyway. I don't have to.
No, you don't do that. They go into the bag. You don't take them out just in case. Just in case it's that $1,500 comic here in about 5-10 years. You don't want to mess yourself up doing that.
There's probably going to be a profit movie. Hey, if you can profit from profit, right?
That's right. Right. First appearance of Crypt.
Yep.
Don't get
first appearance of Prophet. It's like Youngblood #2. It's also the first appearance of Shadowhawk, so watch out.
Look out.
I want to Shadowhawk.
Put them both in a movie.
So badly.
Do it to it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our discussion on speeding bullets. That's right, Superman speeding bullets. Dean Compton, why don't you tell them about the Unspoken Decade?
All right, but first, Speeding Bullet Comics, Norman, Oklahoma. I want to get that in again because we're doing Speeding Bullets here. So Matthew Price, great friend of the show. At speedcomics.com, look him up on Facebook. They'll take care of all your comic book needs.
Yeah, my favorite discussion, which I don't think made the podcast, but when we were discussing what's coming up next, we had Matthew Price was on, and we're like, oh, Speeding Bullets, but we don't know if Matthew's going to be interested. Matthew's like, it is the name of my shop. So yes, definitely good. Shout out and go to check out the website and purchase something.
Yeah, buy something.
Do it.
You freaking moochers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure you're all great people.
See if you can get this issue. And then
right, hey, you might have it. Expect your rate's going to get like 1,000 calls. Oh, Speeding Bullets.
Speeding Bullets. I've been looking for this comic everywhere.
But yeah, so we're at the UnspokenDecade.com 10-year anniversary, bringing everything forward. A lot of fun at the website, a lot of fun at our Facebook page. So keep checking us out, keep commenting, and we're a bunch of likes, and we just thank each and every one of you.
We do appreciate it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Unspoken Issues podcast right here on the Source Material Comics feed. All thanks to the W2Mnet.com guys for hosting the podcast and everything like that. Go back into the archive. You can hear us talk about, this was mentioned, we talked about Batman Holiday Special. Had a lot of great fun talking about some Gotham. We talked about Batman. We talked about Harvey Bullock, Jim Gordon. We talked about that New Year's meme, B-Taz, ladies and gentlemen.
B-Taz.
And yes, check out the Source Material Comics podcast. I think upcoming here, Mark and I have we're going to just keep talking Batman on here apparently because we got Gordon's Law is what we're going to be talking about in our first of a trilogy dedicated to Jim Gordon. And there's going to be Gordon's Law, there's going to be GCPD, and then we're also going to be talking Batman Gordon of Gotham. So that is upcoming here somewhat soon. So keep an eye out on that. With that being said, we are getting out of here. That is Dean Compton. That's Darry Waite. I am Jesse Starcher. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without w2mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.